And we're live. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of The Lost Minds. Thank you so much for everybody that watched the first episode. We really appreciate it, and everybody that subscribed. I am Anthony Eaton. I am here with Emily Jones. How you doing today, Emily?
Pretty good. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good.
I am ready to get into this shit. Today, we're going to be covering the elections that just happened, and um, the
Talking a little
fallout.
bit about the elections,
Mhm.
talking about 2022 and how these elections are kind of being a prediction of 2022. Talking a little bit about the Ro Khanna interview. Um, Chatting about kind of the failures of the squad and also covering in AOC and Noam Chomsky interview that I have yet to see. So I'm
I
very
know.
excited to live react to that. And the last thing was the sunrise protests that are happening currently, targeting Joe Manchin specifically. Those will be really interesting to talk about as well. I feel like I have a few different takes on that were a little bit different from Anthony than when I initially showed you the video, but
Yeah.
we're kind of on the same page there now. So yeah,
Hmm.
lots of stuff to talk about. We should jump right in.
Hell yeah. So first off, viewpoint of the podcast, from both me and Emily, I would say, is that the Democratic Party is, um, I mean, they're inept and unable to deliver anything promising for the American people. Therefore, it's not surprising that they lose elections like this. But basic fact that I think a lot of people fail to understand is that the Democratic Party is corrupt, just like the Republican Party. It's not any different. They're owned by the same people, the same ruling class that runs everything in this country. They buy off the same politicians. They We're going to get into the back and forth, the rotating villain, the basically the political theater that takes place in this country. And I mean, make no mistake about it, that's exactly what is happening right now with these elections. So it's going to be happening next year. Um, it's what's going to be happening in 2024 with the presidential election. It's what happens with every election. And that's part of the reason we made this podcast, is to get the message out there that this party doesn't give a shit about working class people. It doesn't give a shit about you. Doesn't give a shit about me, Emily. Nothing.
If I could add, I think like if
Absolutely.
I
Go
can
ahead.
add, like the part of what we're going to be talking about today as well is kind of like the fact that this is not just, and I saw Nick Cruz from Fred Hampton Leftist tweet this out too. I don't remember his exact words, but same gist here was that this is not like an accident. Like they're not losing elections because they have bad messaging or
Right.
like they could be doing something differently. Which, like, yes, could they be doing a lot of things differently?
Duh.
Absolutely. But at the same time, this is how the system is supposed to work. This is
Mm-hmm.
how the two-party system operates. To like have this idea that Democrats don't want Republicans to win is just not it's not helpful for them. It's not going to be beneficial for them in the long run, and we'll get to that and I explain a little bit of why that is. For some of you, these like concepts might not be super new. For others, we know that there are a few folks that are
Right.
subscribed to our podcast that we know just based off they're our friends and we talk to them that maybe they don't know about these specific terms at least,
Right.
and know how to articulate it. So yeah, we wanted to share that. Like I said, this might be not new for everyone, but at the same time, a lot of people do feel like, especially like within the Bernie Sanders like era of the Democratic Party, that like this is just a mistake. Like if we change the messaging, if we change the
God
narrative,
no.
then maybe something will be different. But I think seeing Bernie lose twice and then also seeing the elections in these midterms that are happening, it's very clear that that's not what it is. So I just wanted to add that
Yeah.
that like messaging could be better. At the same time, this is how it's working, and this is how it's supposed to work. It's working exactly how it's
Right.
supposed to. So we're going to get into that as well, just a little
Yeah.
bit of like terms and more like theoretical
Right.
ideas
Right.
of this concept too. But yeah.
And like another huge reason that that this podcast exists is because personally, I'm just tired of people forgetting about this
Yeah.
shit every 2 to 4 years. Like,
Well, and I saw, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I saw like people talking about, I don't remember if it was a podcast we were listening to, but I saw tweets or some people talking about this as well. But it's also like we forget that there was a new generation of people that entered into politics, especially with the rise of AOC and Bernie Sanders, you
Right.
know? So I think as much as it's so frustrating that it keeps happening and people aren't learning, because at this point, 2016 happened 5 years ago.
Yeah.
2018 happened. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
there's been years for people to learn these lessons, but at the same time, it is still fairly new. And a lot of people who did enter into politics at those times are still very young and
Right.
haven't seen this happen many times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that there's like a valid criticism to say like people should normalize more and practice more changing their mind when presented with new information.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that's why we're seeing so much history repeat itself, is because
Mm-hmm.
older millennials are like, we've seen this before. This has happened before. This has affected us for how many years now? And then you have our generation that's just now getting into politics. And I think, honestly, our generation is kind of why things are stalling. In many ways, because like they're not paying attention and learning to change their mind when presented with new information. I don't know if that's I don't know. I don't know if I like that. I share that sentiment just in myself, but I feel as though that's like part of the reason why we see this repeat itself. It's very frustrating to see that
Mm-hmm.
people repeat it, history repeat itself. But I don't know. I just feel like it has something to do with the fact that AOC brought in so many new folks into politics, and Bernie brought in so many new folks, especially young people who, we weren't paying attention when Obama was in office. We weren't paying
Yeah.
attention when so I don't know. I think that that's like one explanation for it, but not to say that it isn't frustrating. I just wanted to add that as like, it's like the history is repeating itself for a reason, I guess.
Yeah. No, definitely. You're
But
right. I
yeah, it's
mean,
still frustrating. Totally valid to be upset about it, for sure.
yeah. I'm not upset about the outcome. I think it's kind of funny at this point when the Democrats just fall on their ass and fall on their face.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, just the public humiliation's funny, but I mean, like, come on. Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell are friends. Like, Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell are friends. This is all theater to these people. They don't fucking care. They don't care about their party actually being in control. At least the Democrats don't. The Republicans love it because they can pass their agenda, but the Democrats, they kind of like it too. I mean, because every 4 years, every 2 years, it gives them these issues to manipulate people with. It gives them a reason to come to your doorstep or to call you on the phone or to text you and to piss you off and to get you emotionally riled up about abortion or gay marriage or some other issue that they don't give a fuck about. I promise. The Republicans on the other side of that, the Republicans are never ever ever going to ban abortion outright. Because guess what, guys? They need that issue to run on every election cycle. They need that to be both parties need that to be something that distracts everybody in the country so that them and their donors can run out of the back door with all of your wealth and all of your money. And yeah, it's bullshit. And I'd love for everybody to wake up at this point. So
I saw
yeah, that's
something
why
that
we're here.
said Republicans are legislators and Democrats are fundraisers.
Yeah,
And that's kind of the
yeah,
like,
that's their
Republicans do all the legislating, and Democrats don't really do anything to kind of like get them out of,
right.
do anything when they are in a super majority like we see now. But then,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes time to 2022 and they're going to lose a bunch of these elections, it's perfect time for them to fundraise and claim that now this is the most important election of our lifetimes. It's every
Right.
single election is the most important election of our
Mm-hmm.
lifetimes, according to them. So yeah, but
It's
I
it's
think
also sorry, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead.
It's also just exhausting to hear people the same old bullshit like with Obama. It was always, and it still is always, oh, but the Republicans are just, they're these crazy people that just block everything and blah blah blah. But that's why we gotta do the same old shit that we always do every single year, that every single election that gets Republicans back in power. We're not going to change anything. But then to hear like average everyday people repeat that stuff is frustrating, because it's like, dude, do you not realize you sound like somebody's being abused honestly, who's making excuses for the abuser over and over and over and over again.
Well, it's frustrating, and I posted this on my Facebook the other day, and I got a bunch of shit for it. It's
Right,
just
of course
funny.
you did.
It's just funny that uh, it, they like complain about conservatives like voting against their own interests, and they say that, like, I hear liberals say that all the time, and I even lefties, like, I
Yeah,
hear lefties say that all the time, like, how are conservatives voting against their own interests? Like, you're also voting against your own interests, bud. And that's
right.
the thing, is that liberals really do have this like moral high ground, and some lefties at this point, which I even struggle to call them lefties, but people who were a
Right.
part of the Bernie Sanders campaign, who really adopted this like democratic socialism view, really do this thing where they like to do the moral high ground above like conservatives, when
Mm-hmm.
actually they're in the same boat,
Oh yeah.
and they're all being duped. But at this point, I think we're going to touch on this too. Like, can you really be duped at this point? You know what I mean? Like, again, I feel like people need to normalize changing their opinions when they're presented with new information. And from me, I think I touched on this in the first episode. Like, you radicalized me, as I said before. Like, it took hard conversations. It took us being uncomfortable. It took us yelling and screaming at each other and having like very heated debates in
I'm
order
really
for
good
me.
at that. So
Same,
wasn't
same.
hard for me.
In order for me to understand that my views were problematic. And so, like, I don't know, sometimes it just takes a little bit more to get people to see those things, but ultimately I had to recognize like my views were harmful, and I was being presented with new information, and I was able to be mature enough to change my mind when I was presented with new information. So I don't know. People do need to do that a little bit more, but it's also like they also feel like they have this moral high ground over other sectors of like the left, or across the spectrum as well. Like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
it's a
not to
thing.
get too off, not to get too into the weeds here, but like, okay, a lot of liberals. I'm sorry, like at the end of the day, sound like assholes, and a lot of lefties do too, because they do come from this place of a moral high ground where it's just, no, I'm better than you. Like, you're a bad person. Now let me try to convince you of my ideas. It's like, no, it doesn't work like
And
that,
no one's
dude. It
I
doesn't
think
fucking, you can't do that.
I think lefties do it less, in the sense though that when we get angry and we get frustrated and we yell, or people see us as like mean and rude, because people always say that I'm mean and rude, when in all actuality I'm just like telling the truth, and I'm not even like specifically
Yeah,
coming at
right,
someone
right.
specific. I'm just saying in general.
People definitely blow it
Um
out of proportion.
it's like there's a difference between like getting angry and calling someone a bad person, and then also like sharing my experience and other
Right.
people's experiences that I know of, that are how we're being harmed by this system, and then people being like, oh, well, why are you yelling, why are you being so mean? It's
Right.
like, okay. Like, there's a
Yeah.
difference there between like that and liberals like yelling at people just because
People are
like
dying,
Trump
Kim.
bad. You know what I mean? Like their anger comes from Trump bad. Our anger comes from, okay, these issues actually do affect us in many different ways, and we're allowed to be angry about the fact that this is continuing to happen. And it seems like liberals just have like, I think that's the most frustrating thing, is it feels like from liberals, or people that were formerly a part of the left, who were a part of the Bernie Sanders campaign, like a bunch of people who, when I was talking about Bernie Sanders during the primary, were sharing my stuff on Facebook and supportive of my organizing work. And then as soon as I wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden, and as soon as I started to call out the Joe Biden administration, were just like all in on like telling me that I was a bad person. And I
Yeah.
don't know. I wanted to say like there's a difference there, because
Hmm?
I always get shit for sharing my experiences and being angry about it, but they never get shit for doing it for no reason and just calling
Right.
people bad
Yeah.
people. So I don't know, but I feel like a lot of what we're talking about stems into this first story of the recent elections, and how these elections are very like give a really big precedent into what's probably going to be happening in 2022 with a lot of these midterm races.
Right.
The GOP in these recent elections, they got won a lot of these races, but also in other states got really close to winning. And I think that's kind of where the concern is now for the Democrats, is that I think they're realizing that, like, okay, this is going to be a bloodbath for us.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And it
that's
should
the
be.
first story that we're
Honestly,
going
you
to cover.
deserve it.
Yeah, that's the first story that we're going to cover a little bit and talk about Youngkin, who this is the race in Virginia. And then there was another race that I wanted to talk about, which I would have to find in this article. We're going to be reading off an article from the New York Times, but there was another race that it was very close. And will find that shortly. But
And I'm aware of the shittiness of the New York Times, but I mean, this isn't like an opinion article.
it's literally just election results.
They're just giving
it's
results.
just election results.
They have
But
a few
also,
interjections of why they think it happened, which I probably will disagree with. I didn't read it because it's the New York Times.
there are actually some. I mean, they're acknowledging the fact that this is likely going to be difficult for Democrats in 2022, which is very interesting.
That shows how fucking clear it is that the New York Times is even like, shit.
Yeah.
This isn't going good.
Yeah.
We're kind of screwed.
Yeah, basically
That's
Youngkin
awesome.
won in Virginia. He's according to the New York Times, it says a wealthy former private equity executive. This is his first run for office. He elevated education.
For office.
You know,
private equity owners, like, hell yeah, get them in there. They're the perfect people to make public policy and regulation.
But it's interesting. We will cover why it, like, the strategy of the Democrats was just awful in this race specifically, because when you showed me some stuff last night, I was legitimately appalled by this stuff.
It's jaw dropping. He beat Governor Terry McAuliffe, who is an incumbent. And for those who don't know, it is very hard to be an incumbent candidate, especially when it's your first time running for office. So this should have been a layup, but it's the Democrats.
And it says in this article that he struggled to generate enthusiasm among liberals because Trump was out of office, which is literally a blatant admission of the fact that they use the Trump administration and they're still doing the Trump bad argument to try to win elections. So that's really interesting. Like, the New York Times is saying this, which is just insane.
It also, for a little bit more context, Terry McAuliffe is also in bed with the oil industry. I mean, okay, if you're
Hillary Clinton endorsed him, I'm pretty positive. So that tells you everything you need to know.
Terry McAuliffe, I'm pretty positive, helped run Bill and Hillary's campaign. Well, Hillary's campaign in 2008. I think he's been in office after that. But just get this out of the way. If you're
Sorry, I'm going to look through this article. And
No, you're fine. If you're a can we not get the screen share to work again?
Oh, no, I can. You want me to pull it up?
Yeah.
This article?
Okay. Yeah, good. So the peeps can see it as well. So we're not making anything up, folks. Yeah. So Terry McAuliffe should have won this race. But what I was going to say was that if there is an elected official from Virginia or West Virginia, unfortunately, they are probably in bed with the coal mining and the oil industry, because those are very two powerful entities in Virginia, in the Virginia land.
Don't say that.
I'm stupid. Anyway,
that's funny.
So yeah, it's not like Terry McAuliffe was, salt of the earth here. He's not. His hands aren't clean, so that had a huge thing to do with it. But also, as this article points out, and again, it's the New York Times, you'd expect them to lie and kind of give padding for the Democrats. They kind of aren't in this article.
There's the mayor that you were chatting about.
Yep, Michelle Wu. And people were excited. And I'm sorry, guys. It's really, really, really hard for me to get excited about wins like this anymore, because you can be a dove, but we're sending them into the mouth of an alligator here into the Democratic Party.
Right.
They're going to get chomped up and spit out, and they're going to be a shell of themselves afterwards. And I'm talking about AOC and the rest of the squad. They are, even if you just look at the way they talk now in interviews, they are not the same person that they were.
I will pull up the screen in just a sec again. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm venting. I'm rambling anyway.
There are parts of this article that I really wanted to point out, and I can't find them now. It's very frustrating.
It happens. We're new here, folks. We'll get better at this. But I mean, anyway, it's not like we're missing anything really either. The Democrats
There it
are
is.
chasing Trump's shadow though, because Trump was very, I mean, he was popular. He was not, and I don't mean popular like well liked. There's a difference. Popular can just mean that every time he talked, everybody was listening, whether you hated him or you loved him. I mean, he was kind of, you mention his name and people kind of turn their head. They're like, okay, what do you have to say? But now that he's not in office and it's Joe Biden that's president, they're having a very hard time creating energy on the ground. There were videos of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden trying to boost him at rallies, and the crowd was dead.
And so back to this like specific race, it like I just find it interesting that the New York Times is like outwardly admitting this. Like um which is it should be like it's a very like obvious thing, you know, to those who are paying attention and understand. Obviously, like races like this are going to give the GOP like a pathway, and we're seeing it right now. But also like yeah, I don't know. I wanted to point out this too down here. All like it talks about all politics are presidential, but Biden looms larger than Trump. So this kind of talks a little bit about uh basically how like kind of that same idea of because Trump wasn't in office, the Democrats really like latched on to that messaging. Like they're still talking about Trump when it's Biden who's in office. So let me see if I can get the exact words that they used because it's really interesting to hear from them. So, party strategists warned candidates to talk about issues not Mr. Trump, but with him out of office, the McAuliffe team believed he needed to draw on Trump more explicitly, which they absolutely did. Um, 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 um. Okay, yeah. So yeah, basically that's what it's talking about is just how they like introduce Trump. Do you want to show these ads
Hell yeah.
now because this is very relevant?
Fuck yeah.
So
Their
Anthony
strategy
showed me these last
to,
night.
if I could put it in words, their strategy was, um, well, this is in their words, really. Dig up the grave of the Trump presidency and just defile its corpse. And it did not work,
It did not
folks.
like
They fell flat on their fucking ass trying
so
to do this.
Anthony showed me this
This
initial
is
ad
pathetic.
and I was like, okay, like we can show this on the podcast, but it looks like this is actually an ad from Youngkin's team. I'm like, how do you know for sure? How do you know like 100%? You need to be like 100% sure, fact straight, that this is something that the Democratic Party sent out. He was like, just wait, I got another one. So this is the front, right? So it says like obviously he's endorsed by Donald Trump. It's giving all of these different quotes and stuff. It says "Save America" at the bottom. Like this looks like something that he would use to
It looks like
support his
some
own
MAGA
campaign.
shit.
And then you have this. Look at this beautiful, glorious little part right here.
This is
paid for by the Democratic Party of Virginia. So, yes, this is a Democratic Party ad, and you can tell that this is the same because they have another quote on the back from Donald Trump. So you can tell that this is the same ad here. It has the same messaging. So,
Beautiful.
very interesting. I was really shocked to see this. I was like, why would they do that? Like, I know that the Democrat strategy is stupid, but this seems abysmally stupid to me. I don't know. It's very, very, very interesting how like I don't even think that we saw it this much in other elections. Like this is a lot to do with Trump. This is like
fuck yeah. This is
I don't think I've ever seen something like
they
this.
want him to come back though. That's the thing. They miss him. And it even if it's on a subconscious level, I don't think it is though. I think it's a strategy.
It is, definitely.
It's the Pied Piper strategy. They tried doing this in 2016. It's empower who we interpret as the worst version of our opponent so that we can destroy them, hoping that our holier than thou fucking angelic presence will just wow the American people. And the American people, I mean, no, like the Democrats at this point, they're pissing on your face and they're insisting that it's raining and everybody believes them. And we're just like, yeah, okay. I hope it stops raining soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dude, stop.
Yeah, and like they even acknowledge in this like article too, like the political middle still matters, talking about how the American electorate is really polarized, which it is. And it's there's a shrinking number of voters who will choose between the two major parties, and those votes still matter. Obviously, Democrats are awful at getting non-voters out in elections. Um, and he ran, like Mr. McAuliffe ran as a mainline Democrat, deployed Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Stacey Abrams. He did also get an endorsement from Hillary Clinton, which is a death sentence to any campaign.
I'm sorry. It's so entertaining just to see those names, that Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Stacey Abrams, and Hillary Clinton. It's like they try to make these people sound so badass and so scary politically, but and people hate them and they're not popular. Maybe Obama is. I don't know. That you could argue that. But he's not he's just so mediocre and everybody sees it. It's hilarious.
So that's, I mean, like I feel like we've already touched on a lot of these parts. I'm just kind of like combing this this article but it's basically saying everything that we've already said. Like this is just one indication of how the 2022 elections are going, and obviously the Democrats are becoming very increasingly nervous about all of that happening because these elections are just one telltale sign of it.
It's an indicator.
And I wanted to actually, I might share my screen again because we wanted to talk a little bit about, we've touched on this a little bit already, but also one thing that we forgot to mention, I think we might have talked about this a little bit, but like these elections are happening because Democrats have not owned up to the campaign promises that they had given to their voters. Like even Joe Biden especially, but even the squad. These people, I know Virginia is not necessarily a great example, but this is going to happen all over the country, especially in districts where they have showed up and showed out for Democrats within the last few years, 2018, 2020, and even this year now. So it's really gonna start to show the failures of progressives, specifically in Congress, to do anything to push. I think that like the point of that whole entire argument as well is like I hope people understand that it doesn't bring anyone joy to talk about the progressives and to say that they haven't done shit, but they haven't done shit, and so you have to acknowledge the truth in that. And yeah, it's only going to push people into the Republican Party. Why would you vote? It's that like I think Jimmy Dore says this all the time, but just like Republican light, like why would you pick Republican light when you could have the straight up Republican that's going to tell you to your face what's going to happen to you? Right. Whereas the person who's going to say, I'm going to fight for you and I believe in all these different things, and then is going to do absolutely nothing and has done absolutely nothing. So
it's like you're either going to take the real thing or you're just going to say, fuck it. I don't. Yeah. What is this?
So it's not just a strategy problem. Like, yes, those campaign ads in the back of those campaign ads were crazy. The strategy that was used by the Democrats in some of these races were insane. But at the same time, there's a lot of failures, that valid reasons why people are not going to be voting for Democrats in these elections and also in 2022. Because of the failures of progressives in Congress.
But Emily, you're not obsessing over how evil the Republicans are. You must like them. You must not. You must actually like them and just hate. Your hatred for the Democrats is just blinding you.
People are already doing that, folks. There are plenty of people talking about the Republicans. There are not enough people talking about the Democrats. So,
but Emily, they're so bad and they're scary.
Okay. One of the other things that we've talked a little bit about already, but I wanted to still address is these different concepts. So first you have the ratchet effect, which is, as it says here, how you're being duped by the fake two-party system. As you said, like these things are not happening just because like, oops, Democrats lost, or oops, they're not really paying attention, or they don't have the best strategy, or they're not running the right candidates. Yes, and also this is exactly how it's supposed to be, which is why progressive candidates rarely do win. Even if they have a ton of grassroots support, they have people coming out for them and giving all of their paycheck to them. They rarely do win. And so the idea behind this is that Republicans basically, when they get in power, they will turn everything to the right. They will shift the Overton window to the right. And then when Democrats get in power, they block movements back to the left. So everything just stays stagnant when Democrats are in power.
What's the Overton window, just for people?
acceptable like political discourse
It's like
in a country. The
it's the
spectrum of
what's allowed
to be talked about and
in mainstream
accepted in mainstream
politics.
politics. And even like some like indie spaces actually now, because a lot of indie creators are being like co-opted by this kind of shit as well. But at the
Right.
same time, yeah, so basically like Democrats, like as we see right now, they're not doing any, they're not pushing any of these policies to the left. And if anything, they're keeping it right now, the Overton window is extremely far to the right, and they're keeping it in the right, so that when Republicans get back into office in 2022 and in 2024, when Trump wins again, or a worse Trump wins again
Yep.
in 2024, then the Democrats can say, well, it's not even about Medicare for all anymore. It's, well, we can't give you a public option because new Trump bad. We have to get him out of office.
Right.
So that's the purpose, is that every single time that these Republicans get into office, they are the legislators, right? So they're able to get a lot of things done. They move everything to the right. And then the Democrats use it as a fundraising tool. So when it's time for them to fight to get back into power, they use it as a fundraising tool. Donate to us, vote for us, do this for us, because these new people bad. And then when they get into power, they block every single movement to the left. So they don't try to bring it back at all. And this is how they do it, because this is how they're gaining more funding. This is how they're able to continue fundraising.
Basically, the Republicans, they are so far to the right, to like they're past fascism at this point. Like they're off the political spectrum, basically.
And both parties are
make it
extremely fascist, but yeah, they're like,
exactly. They
you
make
have
it,
to,
but they make it justifiable
Right.
for the Democrats to keep shifting and
Right.
shifting and shifting further right every 4 years.
And that's
Like,
what they want. That's
like,
what both the
yeah.
Republican Party is signing up for,
Fuck
and
yeah.
the Democratic Party
because
is
that
signing up
again,
for.
that's what their donors want. That's what the 1% wants.
It's
They
going to
want
keep
both
them
of
making
these.
money.
The farther right the both mainstream parties are, the ones who trade the main power legislatively, the more you can get away with as far as like cheating the tax system or getting it changed completely so that you get like these bills, like when the tax plan that Trump passed, 81% of the benefits went to the top 1%. So that happened because the Democrats don't have legs to fight on, because they aren't to the left of Republicans anymore as far as taxing the 1%. They're right in the same boat as them, because there's been this shift over time. If that had happened in the 90s or the 80s, people would have lost their fucking minds in this country. But now it happens. And yeah, there's a little bit of anger that comes out for maybe a day or two, but then some other crazy shit happens, or they have Trump go out there and say some shit that distracts everybody again, and boom, we're
I was going to
done.
say, it's not a conspiracy theory to think that they have different distractions in order
No,
to keep
it's
us
not.
from. That's
Absolutely
I hear
not.
people talk about that all the time, and then I hear people say it's a conspiracy theory, but like, why would it be?
Fuck that word conspiracy theory. That's just a very good tool that's used by the CIA and that's used by the elite class and the 1%.
Just to divide people.
Exactly, to divide people, so that when people are telling too much truth, they're getting a little too close to the actual problem. They just, conspiracy theorist, and boom, you're put in a completely different boat in society, and you're basically kicked out of the public square. So, yeah.
So yeah, this is what I have pulled up right now is just another representation of what I've already said. But as it says up here, it's a complete cycle that we're working in, and we need to break the cycle.
Yep.
So Dems win elections, working class gets no help, which is what we're seeing right now. People showed out for Joe Biden for many different reasons, but.
And we're not judging that. It's just what happened, and he's now not delivering on those promises. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of on you and on us to,
in the future, to not let that happen again.
And to punish them for it.
Yeah.
Because if
definitely.
we don't, it's just going to keep fucking happening.
And so they don't get, working class gets no help due to this rotating villain excuse. So I'm going to pull up this really quick so that we can understand the definition of rotating villain. A rotating villain in American democracy is when the majority party has enough votes to pass populist legislation, so legislation that the majority of the people in America support. Party leaders designate a scapegoat who will refuse to vote for it, thereby killing the legislation, and the opposition is otherwise inexplicable, I can never say that word,
Inexplicable.
inexplicable to, and typically comes from someone who is safe and not up for re-election. This allows for maximum diffusion of responsibility. So that's what we're seeing right now with the Joe Manchins of the world. Joe Manchin is in a very conservative state, so he gets away with being able to be the conservative corporate Democrat who is continuously reelected, revoted in. And so that's what we're seeing right now with the spending bill. It's basically what we've been seeing the whole entire time that Joe Biden's been in office. It's the parliamentarian. It's Nancy Pelosi. It's Chuck Schumer. It's Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. It's the fact that it's a Tuesday and everyone was tired and didn't get their afternoon nap. It's literally anything that they can use as an excuse. It's literally anything that they can use as an excuse. I don't think that it's even, I mean, as far as an official thing, it's definitely someone that they designate as a scapegoat, but they use random reasons all the time for not doing things.
Y'all, the squad does this too within their own circle, because there will be a bill that if like 2 of them voted against it, it wouldn't pass, and they'll just pick 2 of them to vote for it and help it pass. And people, it's just like, it's shifting the anger, kind of. It's like, well, we can't be too mad at AOC because Ilhan Omar voted for this, or Rashida Tlaib voted for this, or O'Connor voted for this. It's bullshit. It's a really good strategy. And I think I gotta give credit. It's pretty fucking
it
genius.
Is definitely a huge genius strategy. Because at this point, the Democrats understand that the reason why they're able to pull young people into this party more and more and continually throughout the years is because of the AOCs and the Ilhan Omars of the world. So they need to diffuse responsibility off of those folks as much as they can. I think that we need to get the idea that like the Democratic Party hates the squad out of our heads. They love the squad. They love the fact that the squad is bringing them so many young radical people who are willing to not be as radical as they were to support the squad. So the squad's in on it. Everyone's in on it
them because they get a career out of it.
If the squad was not on Vanity Fair, if the squad was not on all of these giant, if they weren't getting these documentary deals and all that kind of stuff, I would possibly tell you that maybe they're not a part of this strategy. But they are very clearly getting something out of this. In the same way that corporate Democrats get out of supporting and taking big money. AOC and the squad may not be taking huge amounts of corporate cash, but at the same time they're getting something out of this. A quid pro quo does not have to, or like corruption does not have to be from like big money interests.
What is it? It's like 5 years in Congress, you get a lifetime pension or something like that.
But even,
I'm just saying,
but even if
it's all a fucking lie.
Even if I'm not in office for 5 years, I want that cushy salary, that good health care. So you're taking poor people who, folks like the squad, especially Cori Bush. Like Cori Bush was a huge activist, and like she really like shocks me. But at the same time, take those people and offer them exactly what they've been fighting for. And I don't blame. Honestly, I give a little bit more of like leniency to Cori Bush just in the sense that like I get it. Like if I had that, maybe I would too. But at the same time, like
how
but that's I'm just saying that that's the
psychology works. I
know,
it. But no, that's not to you. That's the people who sympathize with that. I sympathize with it on a human level. I do. I understand the human emotions and the human psychology. I'm not saying what they're doing is easy. I'm not saying that
it's not explicitly hard,
I'm not
though.
Condemning
and I'm not
them like forever. I'm not saying that I'm not saying, oh, rotten hell, you piece of shit. I'm saying it's not possible for good people, good-hearted people to go into this party and stick to their principles. It's not possible at this point.
And I guess my point is that they do that happens for many different reasons. And my point with Cori Bush is that one of those reasons is that even without the 5-year forever pension that you get, like you're still living a very comfortable life once you get into office. And so I feel like that's something that like people obviously want to keep. I mean, it's normal human self-preservation. It's not okay. It doesn't make it okay. It's not an excuse. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't hold people like Cori Bush accountable. But at the same time, that is inevitably one of the reasons why this stuff is happening. So
and it's an obvious them not seeing the suffering firsthand anymore for years and getting these benefits. It's doing something to their brain. I mean, it's scientifically proven that there's something happens to your brain and to your humanity when you get an excess amount of money. And I'm not saying that, I'm not putting them in the same boat as like the bajillionaires that run the world. I'm really not, but it starts to change your outlook on life. It starts to change your human contact,
Mhm.
and it starts to affect the way you look at everything, and it affects your empathy, your sympathy. And I don't know, man, I'm just saying it's quite obvious that that's what's happened to them. They just sound different, they look different than 5 years ago, especially AOC, who was coming in saying, if I'm a Congress, if I'm in Congress for one term, who gives a shit? You can flip everything upside down in one term than being there for your entire, for like, than being a careerist and getting voted in over and over and over again, because you're making concessions with this party who at the end of the day wants zero progress in this country.
And now
Zero.
they're, I think, like, the point is that even if they had good intentions coming in, which I think that there is a valid reason to skepticize if they had good intentions coming in, because
There is.
there is a valid question to be asked of whether or not they knew what kind of benefits and what the strategy would be. I think that AOC is smart enough to know this cycle. So I think that there's a valid criticism there and a valid question to be raised of questioning that authority of, like, did you have the best intentions going in? Because it seems like this was planned, but giving them the benefit of the doubt, let's say they came in with the best intentions. Now they are a part of the strategy. They know
Right.
the strategy. They're part of the strategy. It's not an excuse, and it's not something that they can just like get away with because they're pressured or what.
Right.
They had the hardest job. They knew what they were signing up for.
Mhm.
And no politician, regardless, is above criticism or accountability. So
Right.
going back to this really quick, just so we can finish these graphics, is that rotating villain excuse. So again, they're kind of all in on it right now. We're seeing it with Manchin and Cinema, which we'll get to in at the end of the podcast as well, related to the Sunrise actions of like them targeting only Manchin. But yeah, so we see the rotating villain excuse. Dem lose their elections because nothing happens. And then Dems promise to do something in the next election, doing that lesser of two evils excuse, which goes back to the ratchet effect. That's where the ratchet effect comes in.
Mhm.
Is, oh, well, the Republicans have moved the Overton window so much to the left that you need to
To the
vote for
right.
us, or to the right. So you need us to push it back to the left, when in reality, when they get in, they block the movements back to the left.
Right.
So that's kind of where everything fits in. So rotating villain fits in that like middle part. And then on the other side of that middle part of this cycle is the ratchet effect. So it all works in tandem together.
There is another layer, and I'm not, this isn't me going off.
Do you need this up?
No.
Okay.
There's another thing that we're missing here. It's not a huge, I mean, well, it's a big deal, but it's a part of the rotating effect and the rotating villain and the ratchet effect. There's also a thing called the revolving door effect, where when people are in Congress and they make these parties a lot of money, if they lose their race, it doesn't matter, because 95% of them become corporate lobbyists anyway, or they get some bullshit job where they're like, I don't know, some like advisor for a Fortune 500 company. I don't know, some bullshit where it's basically, since they did favors in office while they were in office for these people, they get jobs where it's kind of like, okay, you scratched our back, now we're going to scratch your back. So they don't care if they lose anyway. They're going to be fine. And all they care about is themselves anyway. So that's another part of the game here.
I just realized that I wasn't sharing these the whole time. My bad.
Oh, you weren't?
But here you
It's
can see
okay.
them now. I mean, it basically, you can just see what we were articulating the whole time. So the rotating villain excuse is right here, and then I was saying on this side is where the ratchet effect kicks in. So this,
Yes.
like, Dems promise to do something this time thing kicks in. So those are two representations. The rotating villain graphic was literally just a like Webster dictionary picture. But yeah, so that just kind of gives a little bit more context into these elections. And obviously, I think Anthony and I very blatantly right now are kind of making our prediction that this is what's going to happen in 2022, and we should just expect, and in 2024. So we should just kind of expect it to happen.
It's not even a prediction, it's a guarantee.
It's a guarantee.
2022,
I mean, and there's a lot of precedent
Democrats
for it.
The Democrats are going to get slaughtered in 2022.
There's a lot of precedent for this, especially in presidential elections,
Yup.
that it even succeeds the last like 5 years.
Well, I promise you, if
elections.
Obama got his ass kicked in 2010, Biden's gonna it's gonna be way worse for Biden.
So, anything else that you want to add to the 2022 or recent election?
Oh yeah,
situation?
another factoid to help our case is right now, I don't have like an article to back this up, but you can look it up if you so desire. I promise you it's true. Right now, as far as where he's at in his presidency, Biden is polling the worst in modern American history. That's worse than Trump. That's worse than Nixon, Reagan, Clinton. Like, it's bad, folks. It's not.
That is actually in the New York Times article, so
Oh,
I
it is?
can post
Cool.
it in the comments after this. They talk. I
Sweet.
mean, I don't know if they talk a little bit about like I don't. It's new the New York Times. I don't think they explicitly say that, but they do talk about
Right.
how Biden has very little support right now.
It's bad.
Um, so I can post that in the
If Trump gets
comments.
if Trump declares a candidacy, another important thing here is they might have to allow him back on social media because he's running for office. If he's on social media again, it's over. He's beating Biden. Or especially I think Kamala Harris has a worse chance against Joe Biden or against Donald Trump than Joe Biden would. So I am just saying I'm not trying to be negative because I think positives can come out of this because we can reevaluate the situation as a collective, which is what I really would love to see. Both these parties need to be abandoned. Um, it needs to be the 99% against the 1%, folks. And we need to stop letting people we love and care about being led into slaughterhouses. Like, it's not it the world, it's just going to come crashing down and it's going to be ugly and nobody's going to like that. So let's do everything we can, all hands on deck, to avoid that situation because the empire is already declining. It's heading into collapse.
I
So
wanted to just before I think I forgot to mention this stuff. I won't go too far into this thread. I forgot that I wanted to show this. I didn't have it linked, but I will link it in the comments if anyone wants to check it out. His name's Peter
Peter Dow.
Dow. Okay, cool. He made like a tweet thread. He was like a former Dem insider, and so he's talking about why Democrats lose. And he posted like even this graphic. It's different quotes of Pelosi and Biden talking about how they need and want a strong GOP. Like Nancy Pelosi, September 21 said, "You're the grand old party of America. You've done wonderful things for this country." She says, "I think our country needs a strong Republican Party. It's very important." Joe Biden, June of 21, "We need a Republican Party." Last year in September, Pelosi says this country needs a strong Republican Party that's done so much for our country. So like they're even like they're trying to acknowledge that like they've done so much for the country. Joe Biden in 2019 worried that the GOP might get clobbered in 2020. He says, I'm really worried that no party should have too much power. He also says, in my view, we need a strong Republican Party. We need a Republican Party that's united. So, yeah, I will post this. I will like link this tweet thread in the comments as well so y'all can check it out because I don't want to spend too much more time
It's
on it.
just
But
so ironic
yeah,
listening to people, all they talk about is Republicans and how much they hate them and how it's a very triggering thing for a lot of people, but then they vote for people who say stuff like that. It's like you are voting against your own interest. Do you not understand that? You got to see it at some point, man.
is this the
Anyway,
so we're gonna move on to the
yep.
Ro Khanna interview where he's kind of like basically telling the truth about
Yeah,
himself and the progressives. So, do you want? Is this the first one? Do you know? Is this the
I
first
think so.
part of the video? Let's see this other one. I'll share the screen in just one moment.
Yep.
Which one is the first one? Do you think?
That one's the
Okay,
first one.
so I'm gonna share my screen. Basically, so it says progressive Democrat Ro Khanna tells is talking on Face the Nation. He's a yes on the president's Build Back Better plan and Biden's infrastructure plan. And then the next tweet, the video says, progressives will be a yes despite the ongoing negotiations and the details of the plan, including the climate provisions, which literally do nothing to address climate change. There's like a
Right.
few tax credits for people that use solar panels or
And
something.
for
It's
further
ridiculous.
context, the progressives have, I say in quotations, progressives. Ro Khanna is not a progressive. He is not a lefty. There's been a lot of shit coming out about this dude too, like him and his insider trading with his wife. He's just don't trust this guy. But anyway, they've been trying to negotiate. Basically, the infrastructure bill was at like 3.5 trillion, which wasn't even enough then, but different issue. It's basically gone down to I think like 1.5
Yes,
trillion.
1.5 trillion.
So this is him, this absolute fucking 1,000 IQ genius right here, in the middle of a negotiation. You'll hear it saying, "Yeah, we're gonna vote for it." Like, Jesus Christ, go ahead and play it.
Build Back Better to pass this week. It's really in the hands of progressives right too. I vote yes, though, and the infrastructure bill. The president has shown patient experimentation. It's time for this party to get together and commit. What did it say? Every conference call is more important. Let's say what this is. Everybody is going to get together.
So that's one, but let's show the next one before we chat about it fully.
You gonna play, asshole? Jesus.
I don't know if it's like buffering or
But you do expect to stay, as some have projected, because on another network this morning, Sanders was saying he wanted to try to add in the bill still. Pharmaceutical prescription drug pricing is what he talked about. That's pricey. How many changes should we expect?
Be a yes. I think we can have Sanders is doing a great job. I mean, that would save money and help people with prescription.
350 billion. Sanders, is that you think will keep the Senate on board?
Well, there are two different issues. One is the actual reduction of cost, the prescription drug.
I think I have a decent analogy for this.
I'm a yes.
Oh, yeah, no.
Anything else?
The American others having massive ads against them, that may be the climate civilian for being.
Beautiful job, bro.
So was this I don't mean to like question you right now, but was that something you had told me that there was something that happened about him basically saying that there's nothing that progressives can do? Is that kind of what
Well, okay. So let me ask you this. You want a raise at your job. So you go in and you tell your boss, I would love a 20% raise, but I mean, if I'll take 15
got it?
coming in.
I didn't know if that's
your
what
boss
you were.
your boss is gonna laugh
Yeah.
inside and be like, okay, well, he basically is like, yeah, I'll take a 15% raise, but let me persuade you on why I think I deserve a 20% raise, and hopefully you'll hear me out. Your boss can be like, what the fuck is this? What is this guy's problem? Like, what an idiot.
Yeah.
That's not how you negotiate. That's not how you use power. And
they're just basically saying at this point that they're going to give up and like this is what it is, right? Like that's the point.
Yeah.
Like we're going to vote for it no matter what. There's really nothing else that we can do.
Right.
We're trying. I've actually heard contrary to that there's already been like it's been a no, that like the prescription drug stuff that Bernie is doing is already a no.
Sure
like it's not happening.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead if you want to mute my mic.
Yeah. Sorry, we mentioned it in episode 1. We have animals that we can't control when they're needy. Yeah, so this is the issue. These people don't know how to use their power. They don't know what power is in the first place. They don't even understand the power that they wield. AOC not going on Twitter to her 12 million followers and just tweeting, "Hey, we're gonna organize this at the the Capitol. We're gonna." That's a lot of power right there. Sorry, you might hear my dog barking. What Rokana just did there was not only childish, but it should. Again, I apologize. It should be again just showing the inadequacy of not only this party, but the people in the party that claim that we can have hope for them. They're going to deliver this badass change, this structural change. And we can see that they're not capable of it. These people aren't capable of it. They don't have the spine for it. I don't know if it's an intelligence thing. I don't think it is. Hi Nova. That's our puppy. But yeah. All right, man. Chill out.
Sorry.
It's okay. She's just a little upset right now. She saw a dog outside probably. But yeah. And again, it's not to make you feel hopeless at all. That is not at all the goal here. It is just to show you stop getting duped by these people. They aren't serious. They are careerists. They're working within a framework that only delivers things for them. It doesn't mean any change, any substantive change for anybody besides themselves. So that whole preschool thing, yeah, okay. Am I going to say that stuff's bad? Obviously, I'm not going to.
No, but
that shit's a duh in America. I'm not going to be impressed that every kid can go to preschool.
Not every kid can go to preschool. That's what I want to mention. Is it okay if we move to the Sunrise story instead of that one next? Because it's related. So if you didn't know, the Sunrise Movement has been doing a bunch of protests confronting Joe Manchin over the spending bill, and like chanting things like "We want to live" and things like that. So one of the concerns, I'm going to show some stuff, but just as you mentioned that, one of the concerns that I have is that, like we've said, the stuff in the spending bill is not going to really do anything to materially change majority of people's lives in America.
Right.
So, and I have a personal story about this. A lot of like what Democrats and neoliberals do is this is what Elizabeth Warren did a lot during her presidency was, what am I trying? There's different metrics, like different, what's the word that I'm looking for right now?
Means testing.
Means testing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I said
You're
metrics. Welcome. Means testing.
No, you're good.
That's that my family was affected by that. So like during the Obama years, Medicaid and food stamps were very means tested, and my family really was struggling. We had been on food stamps for years at that point. We ended up moving to Flushing, Michigan, which is about 20 minutes north of Flint. Flushing is a much more rich, conservative. It does have a higher cost of living. It's a richer neighborhood, basically. My mom wanted us to go to school out there. And so we lived in like a really tiny two bedroom apartment that my mom was sleeping on the couch. Okay. So did not have a lot of money. It was during my parents' divorce. And we applied again once we moved to this new area with our new address for food stamps. And we were denied because we were living beyond our means. Not because her income was like too high or anything. We were living beyond our means by living in Flushing. We didn't have to live in Flushing. We could have lived in Flint, but because the cost of living in Flushing they knew was higher than in Flint, they denied us food stamps. And that's just one example.
Who was president when that happened?
It was Obama.
No way.
So that's what I said, is that this is what a lot of
liberals would just be like, but Snyder was in
this
office.
is what
so
a lot of
Republican thing in Michigan.
Well, but they don't get it is all based off the funding.
Convenient.
It's all based off the funding that they get from national, though. So when Trump was in office, Trump was, I remember in 2016, I did a lot of work around what Trump was doing with cutting social safety net, because when the federal government cuts social safety net programs, the states really don't have much that they can do, right? So like they need that funding. So that's kind of just one example of means testing that I wanted to share my personal experience. This means testing and the way that this is, the way that this has all been gone about. I was reading, I don't think I have the article, but up here with me, but the the ideas that are in this spending bill. It's very like small percentage of income of this, and it's like it's very specific of like what qualifications you have to meet in order to get these childcare credits. The universal pre-K. It's not universal pre-K. It's just you have to fit certain qualifications in order to access these programs.
Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos and William Shatner are sucking each other off in space right now.
So it's just it's ridiculous. It's really crazy to think about. I wish that I had the article still pulled up, but of like all the specifics of this bill, and I can try to find it while I show y'all this, because I wanted to show y'all what this is just really relevant right now. This was going to be our last story, but this is relevant to what we've been talking about. So the Sunrise Movement has been organizing a few different actions recently to confront Joe Manchin. I think their goal is to get him to sign on to the spending bill. From tweets that I've seen, is that's their goal, is to get him to stop withholding his vote for this.
He's holding the bill hostage to get he's doing what progressives should be doing. He knows how to leverage his power. So what he's doing is he's saying, I'm voting no on this unless the spending gets cut down.
And that's part of he's currently that rotating villain.
Yeah.
He's the rotating villain he's now currently the villain that gets folks to leave their attention off of the squad and put it onto people like this.
And Kirsten Sinema is the other one, and she is a senator from Arizona.
So yeah, I wanted to show this really quickly because do you think people can hear these videos, right?
They should be. Hopefully
I think so. Well, if not,
we'll find out.
We'll find out after. if y'all can't listen to these, I will definitely make sure to post all the links that we're showing these videos to. But at least you can watch and kind of I can share a little bit about what they're saying, because they're just chanting a few things.
I hope they can't hear it so that we can make up everything that we're saying, and it's just not true.
Okay, stop.
Whatever.
Okay, so he's coming out of his yacht club and he's going to his car.
Yacht club.
And these are Sunrise Movement protesters, which I actually have a friend who is doing one of the an organizing friend who was at this protest and was almost ran over by him when he was trying to get away in his car. But despite that, I wanted to show this video because this is kind of what they're doing right now.
He's a stand-up guy.
So if you can't hear, they're shouting, "We want to live."
Who wants to live anymore?
So this guy who, let's see if I can get a shot of him. This guy who's walking right next to Joe Manchin right now. This organizer right here is saying, Senator Manchin, my life matters. Senator Manchin, my friends' lives matter. My family's lives matter. All those different things. So they're shouting. So yeah, that's basically it. Goes on for about a minute and 20.
Part of that video, it's when that guy falls and Joe Manchin's like, "Shit, fuck! I have to act human. I have to act like I'm helping this this poor civilian." And it's so fake. It's hilarious.
But yeah, so that's kind of what that's their protest. So they were doing that. They went to his yacht club. Obviously, they followed him out to his car, stood in front of his car, all of that good stuff. I want to be really clear when I say the questions. I want to okay, so what I'm going to say after I say this is more questions and concerns that I have about the goals of this protest, rather than me saying that this was not a good action to do. I want to disclaim that I am 100% in support of actions like this. I think that people should be doing this to all politicians, not just Joe Manchin, not just corporate Dems, progressives as well. Every single politician should fear shit like this happening to them at their homes, at their workplaces, at the place that they go to the gym, at their favorite restaurant, all of that, right? So I support actions like this. I am glad that the Sunrise Movement is at least trying to hold people accountable, right? So they were part of one of the organizations that told folks to vote for Joe Biden. I am happy that they are doing something to do that. I do have some questions and concerns, however. my biggest question and concern here is their chanting and their messaging and their narrative here is we want to live. This spending bill is not from a Sunrise standpoint. Sunrise movement is mainly about the climate. The Sunrise movement is not going to get anything out of this spending bill, right? So the climate provisions, I will have to look it up. I looked it up last night, so I'll have to pass it over to Anthony in a second, and I'll look up that so I can get the specifics for y'all. But if I remember correctly from what I read last night, this spending bill, basically the part of the climate that they have in this spending bill is basically just like tax credits for people. So Ro kind of said like solar, Ro kind of mentioned electric cars, things like that. The part of the spending bill is giving tax credits to people who put solar panels on their houses, to people who get electric cars, things like that. We know that that's not going to solve climate change. We know that there are 100 companies in United States companies alone that are contributing to the majority of global emissions.
It's like
70% of global emissions that are contributing to climate change. So we know that giving folks tax credits for installing solar panels is not going to save us from climate change. So my question to the Sunrise movement is, why is the chant "we want to live"? Because this is not going to guarantee any of us that we will have a life of even the life that we live now in the future. And I'm wondering why they're again doing this, succumbing to this rotating villain strategy of like, instead of targeting the progressives and saying y'all need to withhold your vote, y'all need to force your vote for better provisions and for more stuff. This bill, like we said before, went from 3.5 billion to trillion to 1.5 trillion. So we know that they did have, even though it wasn't a great bill in the first place, it wasn't a great bill when it was the 3.5 trillion, but they did have more progressive concessions in that bill than they do now. So instead of saying no, progressives, stop lessening your ass in order to get Manchin to vote yes on this bill. Instead, force your vote so that the Democrats have to now go to progressives and say, we need your vote instead of Manchin's vote. Manchin's going to have to get in line. Again, this is all a strategy. So if they are actually the villains in this scenario, if they really wanted to fight for the people, then Manchin would have to get in line. The only reason Manchin's not voting for this bill is because he's agreed to be that rotating villain at this point. So they can be doing that. They can be doing that.
I mean, the point of these progressives being voted into Congress when they were is so that they could form a block and they could have power. If they aren't doing that, what's the point of them being there?
Right. So I guess that's the questions that I've been having for the Sunrise movement, and kind of the only criticisms that I have of this protest is, again, I want to see people, regular people going out there harassing politicians on a daily basis to get the things that we need. I think that them doing that is completely correct. I also think that the Sunrise movement is one of the only organizations that I've seen that has done a hunger strike to protest Biden, that is doing these things. So at least they're doing the hold Biden accountable thing. It's not, because I support all direct action, truly. If you're out there doing the thing, I'm supportive of you. My only concern is that I think that this could be more effective. And I know how much influence Sunrise has. Like I said, one of my friends was at this protest, so I know how much influence Sunrise has. I've worked with Sunrise in my capacity as a president of student organizations at CMU. I know the kind of influence that they can get if they had a good strategy. And I think that's so frustrating to me, is I want to support them, but I'm just so frustrated that we're trying to force Manchin to say yes for this dumb fucking bill that is going to give people absolutely nothing, especially the mission of Sunrise. Like, it aligns with the mission of Sunrise 0%, not at all. So I just don't get the abandonment of your mission as an organization. And I guess because the Sunrise movement is doing all these actions, I guess my only hope for them is that when 2022 comes along, they're still not pushing Democrats. I think that's my biggest concern, is like, they push for Joe Biden. Joe Biden wasn't going to give us anything in the first place regarded to climate. So they can't say that they weren't duped. I truly feel like, as a nonprofit major, someone who has a 5-year, I was at school for 5 years and has a degree in nonprofit administration. I'm a certified nonprofit professional. I don't say that to brag. I say that because I know genuinely that a lot of organizations use the nonprofit industrial complex to fundraise in order to keep their organizations relevant instead of actually impacting the mission that they have for their organization. So my concern is that Sunrise is turning more into an organization that's worried about continuing their funding and continuing their relevancy than they are about actually solving climate change. Because I think at the beginning they were, and they sat in Nancy Pelosi's office, which was a fantastic action, and they were combating all Democrats. But at the same time, we need to understand that these actions need to be moved to progressive Democrats. We can't just sit here and say, like, oh, their hands are tied at this point. Like, I don't know. I think that's my biggest concern. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Anthony. I'll try to look up this article, but those are the concerns I've had when I saw it. So
it's, I mean, I don't have too much to add. I mean, it's concerning to see. I mean, as Emily said, like it's not anything towards the members of Sunrise or any of these, like the members of DSA, like the Democratic Socialist of America, for people who don't know. They're great. It's just the leadership. It's just I don't know. I think it's legitimate to question whether the leadership is doing it for the right reasons still, or if they're using the energy that their supporters offer and exploiting it and using it. So I think that's a valid concern for sure. Do you not have a place to plug it in? No. We can end it soon. I mean, we only have one thing left. We don't even have one thing left. We can save the AOC and Noam Chomsky thing for next time.
okay,
We're gonna do that. So
we've been already going for a little over an hour. So
yeah, we don't want to go too long here, and our laptop's gonna die anyway. So the AOC and Noam Chomsky, I put bullshit interview. I mean, it is bullshit. A lot of it. I've had a lot of issues with Noam Chomsky, and you can ask Emily. I used to worship the guy. I have a couple of books of his.
we both used to be very in tune with AOC and all the progressive reform the Democratic Party messaging. So,
dude, at this point, Naomi, if you're gonna, he's had some really bad takes lately, and he's been a very, I'm just gonna say, disingenuous prick whenever he talks about leftist movements, and he's been very dismissive, and he's been very, oh, these children are just causing a ruckus. Like, let's just give them a toy and hopefully they'll go off and get distracted, when he's talking about us and activists and people who are trying to make the squad recognize their full power and utilize it. He gets mad at that. He thinks he loves the squad. He kisses their cheeks whenever he gets a chance to. And he did it with AOC in this interview, and they're basically talking. The issue I have in this interview is it's so flowery and it's so great, and they're talking about all the change that AOC and the squad has made, when there's a whole nother context, there's a whole nother side of the narrative that of course they push out because it doesn't fit the narrative that they want. And it's that, no, these people actually do not ever use their power. They don't ever consolidate. They don't ever make a block in Congress to push the Democratic Party left, which was their job, because they're public servants, and that's what their voters wanted them to do, and that's what they want them to do.
That's what the mission of the organization they ran with was. Justice Democrats' mission was exactly to do that.
Yep. And so Noam Chomsky, his old ass, who, by the way, Noam, if Noam Chomsky doesn't start having bullshit takes, like, that's really the death nail, because his delivery and the way he talks anyway is so slow and boring and makes me want to die sometimes, that, dude, if you're going to start saying some shit, you really just got to go at this point. Like, he's insufferable to me. So yeah, we'll save that for next time.
I feel like what we talked about was really, they were all really relevant to each other. They fit in really well. So Yeah, and I just wanted to mention too, because I was listening as I like stepped aside really quick, about like the Sunrise Movement. I also like just wanted to uplift like the same sentiment that like my concerns have nothing to do with the members of the Sunrise Movement. Like I said, I have a friend who is at those protests, and I have friends who are involved in the Sunrise Movement, and I
It's
also know
more,
people.
like, credit to y'all. Like we're proud to see people out on the streets like that, but we fear that your bosses and the people you answer to are misguiding you and misdirecting that passion and that very
And that's
deserved
not-
anger that you have.
And it's just, and I guess my point is like it's a precedent. So like this, it happens a lot in nonprofit, in different nonprofits, especially ones that are very political. They start to focus way too much on like their own careers, again, like their own careers, their own relevancy. Once their organizations start to get very relevant and start to build a lot of clout, and a lot of people know them and they have a lot of influence, they start to do this mission. There's a term in nonprofit administration called mission drift, and they start to just drift as far and far and far and far and far away as possible as they can from their mission, which is what I see them doing if they're going to use the "we want to live" narrative on this spending bill, which gives nothing to the climate.
Right, like your right to live is still going to be in jeopardy even if this bill passes. So not only is your messaging wrong, but
your target is wrong.
Your
Try to
target's
target
wrong,
your
and
the progressives, the squad, to withhold their votes in order to get part of the Green New Deal. Like we know that we're not going to get, like it's the Biden administration, but at the same time, like why are we not fighting for those kinds of things? Why is the squad not withholding their vote to get provisions of the Green New Deal, to start slowly chipping away at that? If if the incrementalism is the strategy, why is
They aren't even
incrementalism
doing
like we're not
that.
even doing incrementalism at this
It's
point?
a joke.
So I mean, yeah, it's definitely something that I'm concerned about related to Sunrise Movement. But I wanted to like just clarify and just make sure that like no one's misunderstanding that we're all very supportive of the Sunrise Movement and like the stuff that they're doing, obviously. But at the same time, I've been very disappointed in the work that they've done, largely just related to the Biden like general election. And even since then, like it took them a really long time to get out in the streets and start protesting Biden. So I'm glad that they're finally doing it. I'm glad that it's finally happening. But at the same time, could we have done it sooner? And can we maybe rethink the messaging and the narrative and the targets a little bit better?
Yeah, and I don't think that's invalid to say, and I think that's healthy. That's why it sucks when the left gets divided by disingenuous like outside actors all the time, because it's like it would be good. It's good to have the energy that the Sunrise Movement has, and a lot of these
influence.
and the influence and the energy
Membership.
that a lot of these organizations have. But it's really like it's almost deemed like abhorrent or just like a crime to question the people at the top. Be like, are their interests good? Is there even a potential for them to be corrupted, or for their intentions to change by like what Emily said with the clout? And I don't know as much about the nonprofit industry and how it works. But again, human psychology tells you that if you're running something like that and you start getting political power and attention, and then the other thing, money, obviously, I think it's good and healthy to start to question that and to hold people accountable and make sure that their humanity isn't being chipped away at through these power structures and these influences that in America they're supposed to do that to you. They're supposed to make you a little capitalist robot and crony that sticks up and advocates for the system at the end of the day.
And as a nonprofit, like I have a degree in nonprofit administration. As someone who went to school 5 years for this stuff, like always be skeptical of nonprofits, please. Like nonprofits are not going to save the world. If y'all want to read a little bit more about this issue, read the book "The Revolution Will Not Be Funded." It's a very good book. I have not read the whole entire thing, but I've read excerpts of it. I really want to read the whole thing. That's like the next book on my reading list I want to read. But yeah, it has really good information in there about the nonprofit industrial complex and just kind of how this continues to happen with nonprofits who have donors who have vested interests in continuing things like poverty and hunger and homelessness. And so they will feed the hungry or they'll feed the homeless, but then they won't do anything to change legislation to stop people from being hungry or homeless in the first place. So it's just things like that. But it also talks a lot about like how a lot of billionaires put dark money into C4 organizations like Sunrise Movement. I'm not accusing Sunrise Movement of this, but organizations that do the same work that they do, a lot of times they will be funded by billionaires, and it's a way for billionaires to evade taxes.
You're not accusing, but again, it's healthy to.
It's just healthy to have a skepticism, and I'm
yeah.
not saying be like skeptical of Sunrise specifically, but if you want to do more research and kind of make that decision on your own of whether or not Sunrise is doing that, cool, that's on you. I'm not advocating for that at all, but definitely read that book. It's an interesting book. It has really good information, but I just wanted to share that as like someone who does have concerns and who did get a degree in this work. And also who's been organizing for 5 years as a student organizer. Like this strategy and this like messaging just doesn't really I mean, it's always good strategy to, like I said, harass politicians when you can. Love it. Love to see it. But I feel like we could be doing something a little bit more effective. So,
yeah.
But
all right, you ready to wrap this shit up?
I'm ready to wrap.
We have had an hour and 20 minutes of scandalous content.
Don't forget to subscribe, share the video, comment below anything that we'd love to talk to y'all in the comments. Anything that we talked about.
I love interacting with y'all.
Please
just
do.
The 2 people that did add on to
Please.
it. I love it.
Please talk to us about anything that we said
Even
in the
if
comments.
you want to shit on me, shit on me. I don't care. Do something.
Subscribe, share. We'll see y'all next week on Friday, usually around the same time, like 11 to noon. And let us know. Follow us on
sorry
social
again
media.
about our annoying ass dogs. All right.
Bye, y'all.
Love y'all. See ya. Peace out.